Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Wade. It is May 23rd. Sorry about that. For today, we're returning to our marathon coverage of the Dr. Michael Brown debacle. And this is part 4, if I'm not mistaken. Things are starting to blur a little bit. We are at the hour and 33-minute mark of what is a 3.5-hour video. So there's about 2 hours left. And we will forge ahead. I would suggest that you go back and listen to the first 3. They're long. But I think it's important to respond in real time. I have not previewed any of this, so I'm reacting in real time based upon the things that have happened. If you want a summary of the entire backstory, I would strongly recommend watching the first video because I explained that for probably 10 minutes, and then I go into the actual video. So this video is Dr. Brown in an interview podcasting format with Heather Schott from Mercy Culture Church. The conflicts of interest abound. Dr. Brown is an apostolic elder of Mercy Culture Church. They owe him the initial credibility that they were seeking when they first opened this church several years back. And then on top of that, they have a alleged trauma expert on this show, whose job it appears to be to deflect and distract people from the fact that this story is about Dr. Michael Brown. It's not about anything else that this guy tries to pretend it is. And then the third person is one of Heather Schott's employees. It's an underpastor from Mercy Culture. So the amount of conflict of interest is obscene. They obviously made a calculated decision to have Heather do this since it's about sexual abuse, even though they pretend it's not. They, under the guise that Landon Schott was just entirely too busy. Mercy Culture themselves have no mercy. They want to build a 3-story facility on their property to house victims of sex trafficking. And when the neighborhood balked at the idea, they took them to court. They smeared them publicly. They slandered them. They called them witches and warlocks and demons and said they were doing seances and all this other nonsense. So the truly hypocritical thing going on the undercurrent here is that Heather Schott basically has built this public persona of somebody who's so concerned about female victims. But in this case, she has no concern for the female victims whatsoever. They're all like roadkill in this video, which was designed simply to give Dr. Brown a platform to be able to pretend to answer the problems. Now, Dr. Brown gets upset throughout this entire video. He's crying and seeming to break down. And I'm sure this is not easy on him, but there's no concern for the actual victims. And that's the another layer of the hypocrisy that's going on. The bottom line is Dr. Brown wants to return to ministry, and he's been trying to, and he's been getting the expected pushback. So this is a PR stunt so he can say that he sat through 3.5 hours of questions, and it's presented like this is a spontaneous kind of like, we're going to have our guest, and our guest is Dr. Michael Brown. He's going to let me ask any questions I want. But you'll see, and we've already seen in previous episodes of this, that Dr. Brown obviously coordinated this, probably orchestrated it, but he certainly coordinated with Heather Schott because they were in possession of like private emails that Dr. Brown had between himself and the victim, Sarah Monk. And she had them ready to display on screen as Dr. Brown said as talking points. Well, the only way that would happen is if he had provided them ahead of time. So, keep that in the back of your mind as we pick up at the minute 33 mark.
more intensive counseling during this time. And in fact, just to say this, just to deal with some of the myths out there.
Yeah, probably from the trauma of the situation.
Yeah. So it's been hell to live with being called a predator and a groomer. All these years, I've tried to keep a careful testimony and honor the Lord. And if I'm in the airport and get aggravated with a gate agent, I immediately say, I'm a minister of the gospel.
Right.
I should do better. Please forgive me. I want to live like that, And,
Yeah, just to be clear with the kind of dissembling going on here, I don't think it's fair to call Dr. Brown a groomer. What is fair is that one incident that he had with Sarah, he engaged in grooming activity. And it appears, even the Firefly report says that there was nothing after 2002. So as long as that remains the case, this just appears to be two very poor lapses in judgment a very long time ago. But he built his ministry on this kind of faux holiness stance when he himself knew that he was anything but. And even that, I think many people would probably be willing to kind of move on after 25 years. But as the Firefly report clearly indicated, at every single turn over the last 25 years, he has defended, deflected, and dissembled. He has not owned any of this, and this video only continues that practice.
Above reproach. And that's why I was confident to do the investigations, right? So not only do we go through this whole procedure, the sabbatical, the taking the time off, I was getting counseling. Our board posted a statement that there would be an accountability team. This is not the same as the elders that oversaw the investigation, but an accountability team of elders that could check on me, like I had done with other ministers that were going through a rough time because of the trauma of this and the living hell that Nancy's experienced. Unimaginable. I cannot describe in human words. And this is the first time in a while I've said it without breaking down sobbing, because we've been behind the scenes discussing the pain that Nancy has suffered. Life as she knows it is over.
In public.
Okay. That's a little hyperbolic. I don't think life is over as she knows it for Nancy. Nancy also decided to wade into this publicly and issue a statement basically calling the victims liars. And I'm sorry, but if you choose to air things in public, then you're going to get a public response. And Dr. Brown knows this. So, and again, nobody is making the argument that life has not been disrupted completely for Dr. Brown for the last 7 months. What he always fails to add is that it's his fault. These are things that he did. Just enough with the gaslighting.
Like on social media.
She's a master landscaper gardener. Her pictures of our gardens gotten into calendars, right? She can't go on social media to go look at garden pictures because someone's going to come up on the thread and I'm a predator, an abuser, and a groomer. And she just feels life as she knows it is over and can never possibly be restored. How do you get the reproach and junk off that's been spoken? And she feels like Job and the ash heap, just cutting herself with pottery. So
I don't even know what to do with that. He just compared his wife to Job's situation. And Job's situation was obviously where God was having a conversation with Satan and basically, was, visiting calamity upon Job. Job was completely righteous in the situation, right? So, it's a kind of unseemly comparison.
It's been very traumatic. And for any that are glad to hear we've suffered like this, I question if you know Jesus.
That's right.
Well, nobody's glad that you're suffering, Doc. What we are is we're more concerned about your victims than necessarily about you, number one. And number two, nobody that I know is suggesting that you should continue to suffer or you shouldn't repent or you shouldn't be allowed to be restored to your walk to Christ. Those are all BS talking points, okay? What we are saying is you're disqualified from ministry.
If you know Jesus.
That is right.
So on the accountability team was to be a trauma-informed counselor for me, because of this trauma. That's what it was for.
No, at least not my understanding. Ron Cantor hopefully will watch this video, I'm sure. Maybe he can respond to this point. But I believe that the point of having the trauma counselor on the elder accountability team was so somebody on there had a clue about the victims, not about the perpetrator.
And I did get counseling, and I'm still getting it. And I know that's why I've been stepping back into ministry step at a time, because I know there's still wounds to be healed. So we submit to the investigation. Remember, it's a twofold process. I think it's just a summary that's going to be published. And then the recommendation of the elders, that's the only thing that counts now. What do the elders say as the...
Yeah, what he's doing there is that we covered this on the previous episodes. They commissioned Firefly to investigate and conclude what happened. Then the second part was they created an elder accountability team to parse out the report and make recommendations. And it became clear when the EAT's report came out, which disputed some of the findings in the Firefly report, that the sole purpose of the EAT was to justify Dr. Brown getting back into ministry. So what he obviously wants to do is pretend the Firefly investigation, that doesn't matter anymore. The only thing that matters is the EAT, because that says I can go back to work.
They evaluate everything fairly, all right?
No, I believe most objective people have said, including Ron Cantor, that the EAT did not at all evaluate things fairly. And maybe because one of the four people on the team was the chief board member for Dr. Brown.
Well, now I find out the actual report, it's called a summary, but the actual report's going to be published. This is a couple of days before it happened. I was mortified. I mean, my world collapsed several times over this, but Nancy and I, mortified. What? Like, for example, there's one person whose testimony would not stand in the court of law, who says that we would watch movies from the 60s, documentaries with nudity, Woodstock. He and other interns would sit with me and watch these. Like, what are you talking about? This is, the students here at SLS, they've seen the presentation. At Christ for the Nations, at YWAM, generations of students, thousands have seen it. I'll talk about the counterculture revolution, how it shaped America. I'll talk about what happened in the 60s, go from the birth control pill to the assassination of Kennedys and Martin Luther King and the Vietnam War, to paint a picture. I said, now let me show you how fast the culture shifted. And I played clips. Beatles, Ed Sullivan, 64. Beatles, Shea Stadium, 65. Looks So Innocent. 2 years later, Monterey Pop, the Who destroying their equipment. Psychedelic. 2 years later, Woodstock. And I'd only played clips from Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock. But I would tell them, by the way, if you watch the Woodstock, don't watch the Woodstock video because it's got nudity in it. It's well known, this the hippie scene in Woodstock. So I would always, so somehow that myth gets out. And now it's...
So once again, the witnesses are liars. The problem that he has is that Firefly did the investigation and concluded that they're not liars. So, and this is what we've said before in the previous episodes. In order for Dr. Brown's story to be true, what he's saying here in this podcast, everybody else has to be a liar. Everybody. The victims, victim husband, Ron Cantor, Labanovich, all of there's a 137-page report from the witnesses. All of them have to be lying. That's a hell of a conspiracy, Doc.
Now it's codified. It's out. It's in a report. It's like, how could that be in a report?
Because that was the finding.
Told to my face.
Because the air of the report is everything in this is factual.
Yeah. And so
that's correct.
The whole idea of vetting witnesses, that never happened. One of my colleagues said that he said the investigator said to him that he never got so many positive reports on anyone as in this investigation. It's maybe a paragraph of those. From what I know, was several dozen. I was told by a colleague of mine close to the investigation that the investigator said to him, "I'm scratching my head. There's nothing here." I can tell you
That's what's called an anecdote. And the reason why people use anecdotes is they're unprovable.
And it's because he and I agreed to tape things when we met.
Oh, you know what? Why don't you say who that person was, Doc? And then somebody can go interview that person. And then that person can tell them, first of all, if they actually said it. And if they did, they have to mention which investigator said that. And then they can go back and interview the investigator. This is all provable. But you don't want to prove anything. You just want to float things out there.
For 2.5 hours so we could look face to face, eye to eye. So I have it on tape, the transcript and tape, where he looks at me and says, I watched your apology. I was moved. He said, what do these people want? Blood? He said, you made a mistake. You apologized. He said, why? It seems a few people, why are they agitating against you? Whatever the exact quote is, all these years later.
So once again, it's obvious that this entire debacle was pre-organized and pre-orchestrated. Otherwise, Heather Schott would not have a copy of this to be able to put up on the video while Dr. Brown is talking. So this is this entire thing is a fluff piece. That's all. It's designed to prop Dr. Brown up. He provided all the proof that he feels supports his nonsense while ignoring, you don't see any quotes on the screen that are not in support of Dr. Brown, right? There is another side to this. And as far as I didn't hear who sent this to him or said this, but I understand that some people minimize sexual abuse. I get it. I understand that it happened a long time ago. So, what do they want? Blood? No, they just want you to go away.
Told me if he got any other accusations, he'd bring them to me. I would say 70 to 80%. I never saw until it was published. And then
because it's about you. You're not an active participant. You're not part of the investigation. You are the investigation. The notion that they somehow should pre-screen with you what their results are is insulting.
At the end, he and Nancy were going back and forth, and he mentioned the term abusive misconduct. And we questioned him, and he said, it's on the tape, this was not abusive.
He corrects himself. I've heard it.
Yeah,
He says it is not abusive. He corrects what he says.
Right, he says it is not abusive. So
he does.
When this report, I realized this is going to come out. And
I guess the notion there was that sexual misconduct, that's okay. But hey, it wasn't sexually abusive misconduct. Kind of sounds like Bill Clinton saying, what's the definition of is?
To my knowledge, others can weigh in on sexually abusive misconduct, which basically is not a legal term. And then he has this expanded definition of it. Even with the expanded definition, I didn't do any of the things.
Yeah, well, they said you did. And this note is from the Firefly report. Firefly would take a wider view of sexual abuse and sexually abusive misconduct to include not only abuse within the historically narrow understanding of these terms, sexual assault and battery without consent, which nobody is accusing him of, but also to include physical and non-physical conduct that a person suffers, submits to, participates in, or performs due to the deception, manipulation, coercion, and grooming children and adults, and or intimidation by another. So what they're basically saying, because they throw this legalese up on the screen, which is a footnote from the Firefly report. And this was, by the way, was what the EAT used to dismiss the term sexual abuse and turn it into a leadership oopsie, right? But what they're saying is that the historically narrow definition in legal circles for sexually abusive misconduct includes assault and battery without consent. And nobody is making that accusation here. But we're also not dealing with a legal proceeding. We're dealing with a spiritual proceeding. We're dealing with an investigation into clergy sexual abuse. And what clergy sexual abuse includes is deception, right? Is manipulation, coercion, grooming, or intimidation. And by the way, just the position that Dr. Brown held is intimidating by nature. He was the person in spiritual authority. And I might add, in Sarah's case, actual authority, because he was her boss. He was paying her. Okay? So they said, listen, we're not going to, basically what they're saying is we're not making the argument that he assaulted or battered anybody. Nobody's made that argument. But clearly people suffered because of deception, manipulation, coercion, grooming, and or intimidation by another. And you can certainly make the argument in this case that Dr. Brown was clearly deceptive. He was clearly manipulative. I mean, coercion may be a little strong. With Sarah, there was definitely grooming activities, whether conscious or unconscious on Dr. Brown's part. And clearly, again, as stated, just the nature of the power dynamic is intimidating.
Manipulate, coerce, none of that. So I was very glad to see the elders push back on that. And to my mind, all I was waiting for was that decision.
Of course you're glad that they pushed back, because that's what they used to pretend that it's okay for you to return to ministry. So again, the fire ministry, commissions Firefly. Firefly concludes after they investigated, talked to all the witnesses, parsed everything out, that you were sexually abusive. That's their conclusion. Then your board member comes in with his EAT team and says, we disagree with the people who investigate. We don't do any investigation ourselves. We just are going to say dismiss out of hand because they went beyond the traditionally narrow view that there had to be battery and assault. That's what's going on. Don't lose sight of it.
They're going to tell me, I don't go back into ministry. I need time, whatever. And they looked at everything and said, resume ministry effective. It wasn't restoration. It got restored 23 years ago. Resume ministry effective immediately.
That is so not true. I mean, it may be true that EAT essentially is saying that, but what he just basically tried to say is it was all 23 years ago, and I was restored back then. So I'm not even being restored now. I don't have to be restored. I was just allowed to go back to work because I never should have been allowed. I never should have been removed to begin with. That's what he's insinuating, which is, by the way, really disgusting.
Even so, Ron and some others said, okay, we're going to publish all the other stuff. So you have, for example, and this is the insanity. Think of any pastor, anyone with a ministry that's been around for a while, anyone with a Bible school, over 20, 30, 40 years, right? So in my case, over 50 years. Open a portal, anyone who has an axe to grind, anyone who has an accusation, anyone that felt uncomfortable, and now publish
Let's not
them.
just say a pastor. Let's just say anybody and everybody listening to this podcast right now.
Yeah, that's right.
Anybody and everybody, the last 40 years of your life.
Yeah.
Anybody they feel like going to and asking for a testimony about you.
And they have tens of thousands of dollars to litigate this investigation. What are they going to find?
And so our ministry, we reach a lot of people, but we never have much money. Money had to be donated to us because it cost over $40,000 for the investigation on top of this. So
you paid for the investigation.
Yeah.
It's good for people to hear also to show
you
of paid for it.
Okay. I hope somebody who's more directly connected can respond to that, because I think that he just represented that he personally paid $40,000 for this investigation from Firefly. A great part of me doubts that. It sounds more like the line of fire. The board had to pay for it, which of course they did. They're the ones who commissioned the study. Who should have paid for it, Dr. Brown? The victims?
And the thing is, you don't submit to an investigation unless you know your hands are clean.
Right.
Really? Is that the case that you're going to make as a Christian leader? Well, if you know you're guilty, you don't ask for an investigation. Because, Jesus.
And I said to the investigator, I'll give you the password to all my emails going back decades. In fact, it will verify my whole account with the married woman. I can take you back to threads and we're thinking, okay, I can do that. Here's all the documentation with Sarah. We gave him other emails about other accounts, access to my personal journal. We gave him permission to contact my counselors since 2002. They're world-renowned, founded a major counseling ministry, and said they have permission. We gave it in writing. They have permission to answer any question about anything we ever said in any counseling session. And you can give them, they can give you an evaluation of what kind of person I am. You know, am I a groomer? Am I a pro? Because they are the experts in this stuff.
Except they weren't there in the room with you and Sarah, right? And the fact that you gave them permission to do the investigation that you paid them $40,000 for, what do you want? What do you want, an award? What did you expect? What do you think an investigation is?
Okay.
Full transparency and vulnerability.
He calls them, though, I believe it was the last interview.
And they concluded that you were guilty. So you know, I don't understand. Like, you want credit because you gave them permission when that permission ended up resulting in you basically, you know, it being concluded that you were guilty, right? Okay.
He did shortly before the report came out. They gave me permission to quote him. Dr. Brown is a good man with many years of ministry ahead. And not a syllable of their account got into the testimony. And there's even one part where two different paragraphs of mine, two different sentences are put together in one sentence to say something I never said in the actual report. So
what was it? Because you're making an accusation now that something in the Firefly report conflated two completely different things that you said, put them together like you said it in one statement, and the end result was a misrepresentation. Don't make accusations like that if you're not going to back it up and allow the people who actually did the report to respond to your nonsense.
Here's the other thing. Okay, what more could I do? I submit to the indignity of this report and have to sit with strangers and recount this again. Okay. Because the investigator came with a police colleague, another friend of his. I go through the investigation. Now, everyone with axe to grind, this is now going to be aired out for the world to hear. Submit to independent team of elders over whom I have no influence. Submit my life to that.
So let me see if I got this right. You have no influence over Mr. Bernice, who was on the EAT and is one of your board members. Does anybody believe that? Does anybody in their right mind believe that?
And now get to go ahead, move forward. And even the Firefly report does not give any recommendation, does not say I should minister. There's no.
If I'm not mistaken, the Firefly report's job was not to make recommendations. Their job is to do the investigation and conclude things. Then the EAT was going to be commissioned to decide the recommendations of best course of action. By the way, maybe Firefly doesn't want to provide recommendations. I really don't know what that dynamic is. But obviously the real problem is with the EAT, is with the fact that the EAT was completely compromised and obviously only had one purpose in mind, and that was to return Dr. Brown to ministry. And they had to do that by dismissing the key finding of the Firefly report.
Right. Nothing there, okay?
It's true.
I submit to all that, and the others say, we're not happy with the outcome. What did we spend $40,000 for? What did we spend?
No, what you spent $40,000 for was the Firefly report, not the EAT. Stop lying.
Spend months out of ministry, and you have to remember, our support is down like 30%.
Yeah,
we have a tight budget to start because of all. I haven't replied to.
Well, there is no outcome that they would be
correct.
That they would
Right.
be.
Because the outcome, the spirit that leads them is not interested. What I'm saying,
No.
It's not about you. It is death and destruction of the body of Christ.
That's right.
And
Oh, Lord help me. Where did they find this idiot? It has nothing to do with that. Quite frankly, it's protecting the body of Christ. That's what it's really doing. But this guy's kicked. This is the alleged trauma expert who doesn't care about the trauma suffered by the two victims in this case. He wants to turn, every time he talks, it's been to pretend that this is not about Dr. Brown. This is about some global spiritual issue, that Satan is trying to divide the church by removing shepherds like Dr. Brown.
it is just kill this one, then this one,
Right.
then this one. This is what I want America to understand. And those that partner with that spirit, we're going to talk about.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
We're going to bring some
I have
warnings to the
one
body of
question,
Christ.
one
Oh,
final
good.
question for you to just.
It's not like Heather Schott bringing warnings to the body of Christ. I got a warning for you, honey. Why don't you drop your lawsuit and stop slandering your neighbors? Why don't you stop pretending that you care about female victims of sexual abuse while you're defending a sexual abuser?
hit on briefly because I know people will bring this up. And that is, what about this insane rumor that you somehow facilitated or covered up sexual abuse of children in Haiti?
Oh,
wow.
okay. Let me just throw out two things quick before that to make sure we cover it. The insanity of anonymous testimony. So this gets published in this 134-page document that Ron and others put out. That someone who claimed to work for me in 2017, 2018, they claimed to work for me. And I gave him my phone one day to get an email or text while I was doing radio, and they found porn. They accidentally opened their browser and found porn. Never happened. I've never had porn on my phone. If I was going to watch porn, it wouldn't be on my cell phone. At least 3 staff members have my PIN code.
It's a weird statement, but listen, I mean, I agree. Okay. You know, there are strong points in this story on the other side, and there's weak points. And in the 137-page witness report, there was this unsubstantiated, uncorroborated story from a witness who apparently didn't want to be identified about this porn on the phone story. And I'll be honest, until there could be, you know, some kind of some way to verify that. I mean, you know, we don't want to allow people to be accused randomly without being able to verify. So, you know, I don't necessarily take any issue with Dr. Brown on that.
You wouldn't give it to somebody.
Right, and they'll often have it for hours.
Yeah.
Get this app working, make a call to me to the airline because it's coded to my number, and this way you get to the
Right.
you know, right to the right place. So it never happened. It's anonymous. None of it gets published. We put a screenshot on. I see some guy has a video. He's a porn addict.
Yeah.
So this is the danger.
Yeah.
What
Let me see this. Again, I mean, you know, to be able to, unfortunately, in this age of social media, you know, there's a never-ending availability of comments from people who are sitting behind their computer and they think they're experts on everything and they haven't really investigated anything. And I don't know this person. I don't know what they're specifically referring to, but it doesn't actually, you know, it doesn't really prove anything other than this one person, you know, made a post, not even a post, a comment.
Yes.
if you have
You
to
open
do
up Instagram on the front page when you go to search, and there's going to be pornography all over it.
What does that have
But
to
So
do?
to have the majority of apps of what I'm saying, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, any of it, well, I guess probably besides Twitter, but any of the majority of apps can have.
No, Heather. You don't open up Facebook and suddenly you're greeted with porn. That's absurd. Okay, and I don't believe any of the other apps she mentioned randomly pop up porn for no reason. But this is just about, you know, defending Dr. Brown at all costs.
In my
Pornography
case,
on there without somebody searching or looking for
right.
that.
In my case, it's an anonymous person. It never happened.
Yeah, that's
never happened.
that's the stronger
But
point.
now someone posts based on a false anonymous testimony that I'm a porn addict. This is the madness.
Madness.
And see, for many years, Nancy's walked around the house at times weeping at how social media, how we have become like our worst enemy. It's the opposite of love one another, right?
Yeah.
And then I've written for years about how we're destroying ourselves with social media. If you bite and devour one another,
Yep.
take heed lest you consume with one another. There was this old hippie song, they'll know we are Christians by our love, by our love. I wrote an article a couple of years ago, they'll know we are Christians by our hate, by our hate. This is before I was involved with this, so this has been a battle we've been fighting. This is the danger.
The real danger here is, while the fundamental point that he's making is correct, is the advent of social media allows, you know, just an unending expression of people, and unfortunately, human nature tends toward hate easier than love. There's no question. But what he's doing is he's using that fact to dismiss correct judgment, correct critique. That's what he's doing. He's saying, let's just throw it all out because this one guy posted that he was a porn addict. Okay? And that's the real evil that's going on behind the scenes here. By the way, it's the way that he runs his life and his ministry, even before the scandal, it's what I refer to as his hermetically sealed heretical bubble, right? If you go to a Dr. Brown Facebook post, all the comments are, "We love you, Dr. Brown. You're the best thing since sliced bread. Thank God for Dr. Brown. Thank God for Dr. Brown." And if anybody comes in and goes, "Yeah, Doc, maybe you should be supporting Trump," just from a Christian perspective, or anything for that matter, any kind of critique, that comment is removed. It's deleted. It's not allowed. There's no debate. There's no dissent. It's not allowed. And the reason why, and he brags about it. I will be deleting any comments that basically, and he always phrases it like, that are sowing dissent. Okay? Proper critique is not dissent in the body of Christ. As we explained, I think in episode 2, Romans teaches that division in the body of Christ comes from false teaching. Now, maybe Dr. Brown forgets what false teachers are, but let me explain. Jennifer LeClaire, who you platformed, Benny Hinn, who you went on his show, any of the people, you were the one who 6 months before Bicklegate broke was saying how wonderful a man Mike Bickle was, and how angry you were that anybody would dare to call such a holy man a false teacher. Your buddy Sam Storms on the same American Gospel Roundtable said that he knew Bickle to the depths of his soul. How are those comments aging for you, Doc?
Of it. If you do an investigation because there's concerns, then you do it privately and submit that then to church leaders.
Wrong again. Abusing Matthew 18. Matthew 18 has nothing to do with leaders in the church who sexually abuse their sheep. I feel like I need to explain this almost in every charismaniacal review at this point. Matthew 18 is, if me and you are in a church and you sin against me, I'm supposed to follow the Matthew 18 model to regain you as my brother or sister in Christ. If my pastor sexually abuses me, the notion that Matthew 18 says I have to go to him to confront him is absurd. That is not what Matthew 18 is for. Now, I know why fallen leaders like Dr. Brown want to run into the refuge of Matthew 18, because it allows them to control the information. Read the Firefly report for Bicklegate. 16 other staff members, besides Mike Bickle, credibly accused of sexual assault and abuse. And in nearly every case, the culture of IHOP forced the victim to have to sit with the perpetrator and then forgive them. And then they were advised, don't tell your parents. Don't tell the law enforcement. That's what Matthew 18 is for, right?
Others to sort the thing out. You don't air it publicly. The other myth that I've systematically covered up all these years, when I was asked about things, I answered truthfully.
The Firefly report that you paid $40,000 for concluded differently, didn't it? It said at every single turn, 23 years, you have deflected, defended, dissembled. You have lied to bury this and cover it up to protect your ministry. I believe that is exactly what the Firefly report concluded.
About Sarah, but because I didn't confess to the things I never did, people believe I've been covering up.
How's Haiti? Because
Wait,
so
pause real quick, because I do want to say something to what you just said, because it's another insane comment to make. What people are saying is that because he had this emotional affair with this married woman for months, because...
Let me ask you something, Heather. If you found out Landon, your husband, was having phone sex with a married woman in your congregation, would you have the same opinion right now? Would you just call that an emotional affair? If you found out that Landon then tried to meet with that woman twice and only to have the woman decline, would you still have this opinion? What if you found out that basically the woman in question told Landon to stop sleeping with you? Would you have the same reaction? Because I'm going to go with no, which makes you a hypocrite.
Because it was around the same time and some of the time frames can cross with Sarah, that automatically makes him guilty with a sexual mindset towards Sarah. This is insane.
No, this is what the conclusion of the investigation was. Now, you may think, again, I don't know, Heather. I don't know you personally, but I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that if you saw your husband patting the butt of a 19-year-old congregant or employee for that matter, you would probably not go, oh, that's just Landon being Landon, Que sera, sera. He's just being a father figure. Please.
Is like saying any human being that has any temptation, pornography,
Right,
anything, any temptation towards another woman. For instance, my father, he had all of those struggles growing up. I never thought, oh, my dad is struggling with this sexual sin in his life, so now he must be looking at me sexually. It is an absolute insane comment to make, that because he had an emotional affair that he admits to with this other woman, that automatically it makes his mindset, actions, goals towards Sarah sexual.
Okay, first of all, nobody's making that accusation. You're making that up. You're pulling it straight out of thin air. Nobody that I have seen suggests that because of one, the other must be this. Sarah's situation pertains to Sarah. Now, they do cross over because Dr. Brown conveniently left his sexual fantasies about the married woman for Sarah to find. So Sarah was aware of it. But what it does indicate also, Heather, if you really think about it, is Dr. Brown and his wife have said this was a traumatic time in their lives. The church split. I believe they were losing their house. They had all sorts of financial concerns. He was under tremendous stress. He was doing 80 hours a week. We heard him say all this already in this podcast. We know for a fact that the emotional affair or the phone sex, obviously involved sex. So at the same exact time, or close enough to it, the Sarah grooming activities occur. And if you can't see how there could be a correlation between the two, I'm suggesting you're being dishonest.
But that fits the narrative. If you look historically what happens in America, that's why I brought up Brett Kavanaugh. It fits the narrative because if they can prove that to be true, then the series of events that would happen is you will also then, how I operate, how I do gap analysis in this, is I know how Satan operates in this space. So I go, okay, this is what he will do next, Satan. Mm-hmm. So what he will do next is he'll redefine sexual abuse. Well, they tried to do that.
Mm. Wow! So according to this idiot, according to him, the investigators for Firefly were obviously being directed and manipulated by Satan. That because in his gap analysis, that what the modus operandi for the devil is to then, that the Firefly report somehow mirrored that. So therefore, he's using this to be able to dismiss everything out of hand. And by the way, just as a side note, which I think I said in the last episode, Brett Kavanaugh was guilty of sin. There's no question. If it wasn't a completely partisan vote, he never would have made it to the Supreme Court. Not only because of the clear alcohol issues that he was having, but, you want to dismiss the victim, which is odd because you claim to be about victims.
So all of a sudden now the redefinitions happen. And then he'll do that. He'll say, well, if you're under that condition, then everything you touch is submitted under that condition. So now we can have hundreds of victims, hundreds of survivors.
Yeah.
Right. Because
oh, Lord help me. The definition that they put up on the screen from the Firefly report does not allow for hundreds of victims, unless Dr. Brown was sexually abusing hundreds of victims. It is very specific. It's just not as specific as direct sexual assault and battery. Nobody was making that accusation. So it's like they are parsing so hard to try to dismiss phone sex as somehow not being sexual. That's an emotional tie. The fact that he told the woman to stop having sex with her own husband and tried to meet with her twice to have an affair. None of that matters. All of it's somehow orchestrated by Satan.
Anybody that
Right.
came in your contact, you must have.
Right.
Because you struggled with that, so you must have, right? And so, let's just take that and superimpose that into alcoholism.
Exactly.
Right.
Let's superimpose that into anything else.
Anything.
Oh, you must have.
Yes.
Because you had a DUI once and you drove through someone's fence when you were intoxicated, you walked past that 7-Eleven, and because they sell beer, you were planning on driving through another guy's fence.
Right.
Yeah.
So you must have.
Yeah.
Right? And
What? What?
this is how Satan works. It's a
Well, you would know.
blanket statement because it's
Right.
a branding. We're going to talk about that later. And so it justifies, so the end justifies the means.
Right.
And this is how you start threading it together to say, is this of God or is this of Satan? Well, this has the fingerprints of Satan on
That's
it.
right.
Yes, it does.
Because he has a pattern.
Right.
He's actually very predictable. He can create. So
That's right.
31 years you study this stuff, and this is how I put these things together. You put it together piece by piece. You know,
No. What you do is you look at the individual case that you're talking about right now, and you say to yourself, what did Dr. Brown do, and is it right or is it wrong? You don't try to distract by throwing out these gap analysis, macro level nonsense that so you're able to ascribe anything that comes against Dr. Brown as somehow being a move of Satan for the sole purpose of being able to dismiss the allegations against him. And it's so revolting that this guy calls himself a Christian, because what he's doing now is he is bearing false witness against the Firefly investigators and against the victims.
not vetting, by the way, much of the Firefly, and I'll tell them straight up, nothing they do will hold up in court because
It's not court. Stop with the stupid analogies. It's not court. Nobody is suggesting Dr. Brown should be prosecuted. He was investigated for clergy sexual abuse, and he was found guilty.
it's not even statutorily correct, because if you don't vet testimony, it's and the way you get testimony is inadmissible in court, and so the whole system is built on sand.
But he built the system. He just said 20 minutes ago, I paid for the investigation, right? His board decided to do the investigation. You can't come out afterwards and go, well, the entire investigation was built on sand because they didn't prosecute him, because they didn't follow the correct legal, definitions or steps in terms of gathering testimony.
But yet, you submitted yourself to it. Yet is like,
No, but that's the point. He's not submitting himself to it. He's dismissing it out of hand and only focusing on the EAT and pretending to Firefly. And now you're making accusations that the Firefly investigators are actually being used by the devil.
take the Louisville Slugger and swing, right? I mean, I'll just tell you right now, if this was a case I had to take to court, right? The evidence can't go to court.
Except he's not going to court. So stop making stupid analogies.
Because of how it was obtained, the evidence that was submitted that's not amended into a report,
Right.
the cherry picking and pick and choose, this feels like, preacher.
First of all, the testimony provided by Sarah and by Ray is absolutely admissible in court. It is direct testimony of what happened. The only difference, which I'll grant him, is that in a court, the other side would get to tell their side of the story, which is, I guess, what you're seeing here, right? But again, this is not being adjudicated in a court of law. They're only bringing that point up because they think they can deflect the fact that the Firefly investigation concluded he was sexually abusive.
He's not preaching the gospel, cherry picking scripture, not calling sexual immorality an abomination. It was like, you can't operate that way under the auspice of we're looking for justice.
Right.
That is not Lady Justice that is blind.
That's
That's
right.
the very justice that Americans hate today, because there's injustice, because this is how you're going after justice.
Yeah,
What?
absolutely.
And the thing about, one of the elders told me just recently, because this is after the whole thing's done, that he went through every interaction that I had with everyone about Sarah from 2002 on. He sent me a document. This is now after the fact, after everything's been published. The most unbelievably meticulous, where he laid out everything and color coded. And he said, "You answered consistently, just not to their satisfaction, because I can't confess to things I didn't do."
Right, that's it. Right
And
there.
if it may be that with one grad, I said to him that I gave her a backhanded flick, according to his testimony, and I said it hit her lower back. If I said that, I was embarrassed. That would be the one time when I didn't. If I said it like that, I'm sorry. I was embarrassed.
Sounds like you're admitting that you lied about that because you're embarrassed.
But the insanity of things, we finally. So I've been defamed. I've been lied about. I've been every imaginable thing. I don't mean Sarah's lying about me. I think she believes what she's saying to be true, right? But I mean, all the junk that's out there, the predator, groomer, abuser, all this horrific stuff. So I haven't lifted a finger. And again, I've got a nice platform. I know how to debate and do video clips and rebut. I'm not doing that. I'm moving forward. I'm done this interview and I'm moving forward. Those I can serve, great. And that's what I'm going to preach to and serve. And
so you heard that, right? Because that's what the plan is. He originally didn't plan to do this video. He originally just said, "I'm going to go back to ministry, to hell with the all." And then everybody started pushing back. And then he realized, all right, I got to do a PR stunt. So he sent Heather Schott a bunch of clips, organized this entire debacle. And now he's made it very clear. I'm doing this interview and that's it. No, Doc, you're going to go back to your ministry as the voice of moral clarity, and we will be there at every single turn to point out that you are disqualified from ministry until you walk away.
And bless and honor. Okay, so my attorney, though, godly Christian man, said, no, this Haiti thing goes a step too far. And we put it on the screen, but I'm being called a child rapist on social media.
Yes.
On my birthday, my personal Facebook page, I said I may look 70, but I feel 30. And a guy posts, "You parasite pervert, now you can rape more orphans in Haiti." So
Horrific.
This is actually, and we're seeing this day and night. People are just using the mean Haiti.
But where did Haiti come from?
So
because
here's-
I'll tell you, it's because we actually did a tremendous amount of work on that island.
Yeah.
Rescuing children.
So here's
Dominican Republic and Haiti. And I can talk to you at days.
Yeah.
At days with the Red Cross's involvement and Hillary Clinton at the time. So tell me about Haiti.
Yeah.
What is the Haiti
here's
connection?
what happened. And we actually, this is where we send out cease and desist letters.
Yep.
You say, how can you sue someone in public? Hang on. We privately called on people who have brought public reproach to the gospel, defame my name to hurt my witness, and engage in every unbiblical practice of public slander and libel, right? We privately called on them to retract and apologize for the Haiti thing.
I don't know how he's parsing this out. He threatened people who were reporting on the scandal involving Haiti. Now, I'll be honest, I have not covered it. So my knowledge is very cursory, but it involves somebody who was absolutely a sexual predator that worked for Dr. Brown. And the accusation, if I understand correctly, is that he was somehow negligent in reporting that this person was there doing this or something to that effect. I am not making any allegation. I have not done the work to be able to respond appropriately. But I do know for a fact that several people who did receive a cease and desist letter is a legal letter from his lawyer. So he's threatening legal action against people who are reporting it.
Some of them then went and publicized that, brought it out.
Right.
Of course
It's
they
a
would.
righteous thing to do. Nancy said, we have to do it. Everyone I counseled with said, we have to do it. So here's what happened. 2007, there was a gentleman who volunteered at the school. We knew his family because his mom and dad graduated from our school and went out as missionaries, older couple. And at least one of his brothers graduated from our school. So now we're moved to North Carolina, new campus. He had an orphanage in Haiti. and he volunteered to help some at the school. But within a couple of weeks, we got immediate reports of just making some of the women uncomfortable, or he was massaging their feet or something. So one of our guys said, okay, who directed the school, we severed ties with him immediately. This thing, I fired him. Not true. He was never hired, and I wasn't the director of the school then. So severed ties. We then met with the women, talked with them. Then I addressed the entire student body. This is within days. The entire student body to say what was happening. And then one of our guys, who was our director of pastoral care, and in his letter to the FBI explicitly says, he explicitly says that he was the point man on this. He was the one most closely involved. He notified anyone that we needed to about this fellow. There was no clue of him being sexual predator, raping, zero. No clue of abuse of children. We did not know that he worked for another missionary organization. He was affiliated with another missionary organization. None of us knew, including the point man. So 3 years goes by. It's now 2010. Some of the grads, some of the mothers have adopted kids from this orphanage in Haiti, his orphanage. We've never heard there's a report, a problem, zero, ever, all right? They now begin to say that there are issues that allege sexual abuse. To my knowledge, I could be wrong on this, the FBI and ICE never found proof of sexual abuse, but of some things that weren't run well. And if there were charges, from what I was told, it was against some of the Haitian workers and some of the American volunteers. To my knowledge, criminal charges were never brought against the fellow who headed up the orphanage. Well, the first thing was, well, why didn't you warn the missionary organization? Well, we didn't know he worked with them. But plus, I'm distant from this. I'm traveling around the world, right? So our school director didn't know, and the point man didn't know. All right. How could they warn the organization when we had no idea that there was an affiliation? It's like there's a church affiliated with Mercy Culture. Well, no one knew that. Otherwise, we would have told you guys. So that's the first thing. And I was the last one involved. And anyway, what happened was the mothers said, our kids need counseling. We have medical expenses. One we think was beaten. And we want to take the missions organization to court. And we said, well, they've launched their own investigation. You've already gone to the police. So don't sue them now. Let them do their investigation. And don't attack them on social media. Wait for now until they're done with their investigation. That has now been twisted, that we told the mothers not to take legal action. I
can't speak to something I haven't investigated because that wouldn't be responsible. But that is what you just said that you did. You told them to not seek legal. I don't understand how you could say those two sentences back to back and not realize they're completely contradictory.
I actually called repeatedly to the missions organization, kept pushing them. Are you doing enough? Are you doing enough? Are you publicizing this enough? Are you doing enough? Well, telling the mothers, don't sue them, right? That's it.
No, but that's the point. Is people are saying now that you were telling them not to sue. That's what you just admitted that you did. I don't know. It kind of sounds like you're agreeing with them.
So we gave them good counsel, and it was not just me. It was the director of the school and I. Good counsel. Don't sue them while they're doing the investigation. The police are already on this. The idea, the heinous, despicable idea that somehow I covered up the abuse and rape of children in Haiti, that is the ugliest, most demonic, despicable lie I've ever had to deal with.
It's not demonic.
To the point of my attorney saying, we're taking some of that. And
yes.
maybe...
Just for clarity, I want to just paint a picture here real quick on how things actually work. Because there's the way the internet says things work.
Yeah.
And then there's real life, how
Right.
things actually work, specifically in this space. What you're saying is that law enforcement, local or international law enforcement, U.S. federal, Haitian law enforcement, had already been involved in investigating the case.
For months.
Well, let me share some information with you. There's no way for you to stop active law enforcement investigation as
Now, let me stop you. Nobody's saying he did.
a citizen of the United States.
Of course.
No American citizen can stop the FBI. from investigating.
Nobody's making that accusation. Next straw man argument.
Okay? Heck, we're having problems with the President of the United States being able to tell the FBI to stop certain things. Okay? So it is dead on its face. If
Well, just the idea, though,
enforcement
that-
was already involved,
Except that's not, if I understand correctly, that's not what the people complaining are saying. He's conflating things to distract.
enforcement is the investigative authority, not the social media virtual.
Whatever, dude. Just stop with your nonsensical disdain of social media while you're on social media. He just said that one of the primary complaints was that he covered it up. So it's not about stopping the FBI investigation. He also said that they complained that he basically gave advice to not sue, and then he admitted that he told them not to sue.
Warriors. So it's dead on its face. And this is what I'm saying earlier. We're giving things rocket fuel that are dead on arrival. It's with law enforcement, it's law enforcement. Let's get back to...
That's not what they're complaining about, you jackass. Who is this guy?
To the real issues here.
Yeah, and I think the problem is the Christians, okay, that are reposting this nonsense, that are clicking and liking and giving the power to slander, to gossip, to dissension, division in the body of Christ that God calls an abomination. People think that they're playing around with social media, listening to what their itching ears want, not thinking and realizing God is watching.
That's
He
right.
is watching.
And that shouldn't be a source of solace for you, Heather. God is watching. He's watching what you're doing today. And I'll even go further. He knows your heart, right? He knows it's wickedly deceitful above all else, just like mine, by the way, just like everybody else's. So the notion that you think God doesn't realize, I'm assuming, because maybe you have no fear of God, that he knows what your motivation is here today. He knows that you're not interested in the truth. He knows that you've slandered your neighbors at Mercy Culture Church. He knows that you're trying to protect Dr. Brown, and you're doing it at the expense of two people who were victimized, and you know they were victimized. So yes, God is watching.
Your heart beat faster and you get excited at applauding or part of gossip and slander about a good man and a family that is being torn down. God is watching.
Yep.
He is watching when you repost and you give your 2 cents that you know nothing about, that you are just taking Jezebel's message and you are furthering, and now your hands have blood on it.
Your hands, honey, have the blood on them. The blood of Sarah Monk and the blood of Kim. Because the bottom line is you are the one pretending that they're not victims. You're the one accusing everybody else of lying. It's you. Look in the mirror.
Because you are engaging in what the Bible calls an abomination. This is, and we're going to go in.
I can only assume she's referring to division within the body as an abomination, in which case she needs to look at her husband, because that's exactly what they do.
Into more of an intense warning to the body of Christ. But Dr. Brown, there has been, and I'm going
to pause there. We are an hour into episode 4. There is an hour and a half left in the video, so this probably will go 6 episodes, I'm guessing, at a minimum. I don't know what to say anymore. Yeah. It's just despicable what's going on. I mean, you know, the supporting cast just makes this so much worse. That, you know, that trauma expert who doesn't care about trauma or victims, you know, and you know, you just saw it in the Haiti thing, right? It's like the Dr. Brown is not talking about people are complaining somehow that he didn't stop an FBI investigation. Nobody would be stupid enough that I would hope to say that, complain about that. I believe they're complaining, like you said, that he somehow covered it up, or maybe he worked too slow, or maybe he didn't warn people. I think I read things like that. Those are legitimate questions. I don't know enough to be able to comment directly on them. But I guess Dr. Brown figured that while he had this long platform of 3 people lobbing softballs at him, that he would address all the scandals that he's currently facing. Fine. I mean, thankfully the Haiti part was 5 or 10 minutes, because that's really not what we're here to talk about. Leave your comments in the comment section, and hopefully I'll get through the rest of this before I go on vacation. Hold fast, test everything.